Hi, I'm Chris Whitaker and I'm the author of We Begin at the End.
Brought to you by the Wilbur and Niso Smith Foundation, the Adventure Society is a book club for adventurous people. In each episode, we try to bridge the gap between an author and their readers. In this episode, we talk to Chris Whitaker, author of We Begin at the End.
We Begin at the End follows teenage Dutchess Day Radley as she attempts to keep her family safe following in the wake of a convicted killer returning to the small town that she lives in. The killer used to date her mum when they were teenagers, so Duchess is obviously worried that they're going to reconnect. And in trying to stop that happening and trying to protect her small family, she kind of makes these terrible decisions, and she sets off this chain of events that runs for a year, which the book spans a year in her life. And she ends up in a very bad place and trying to find a way out of it. So it's always hard to describe. So I describe it as a coming of age crime novel because it kind of fits coming of age more than anything else. It's a difficult one to put into a box.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a writer?
Yes, so I have a really strange writery story, a really strange way into writing. So I messed up my A-levels. I did English, economics, sociology, and I got really drunk the night before my economics exam and didn't go to it. So I only went to one of the two exams. So I got an N, which is, I think that's like, it's not even good enough for a mark. So my parents were thrilled about that. And I could have retaken it, but didn't want to go to university. Nothing appealed enough. I wasn't one of those people that knew what they wanted to do. I just thought it would find me stupidly. You know, you just fall into something that you like doing. But I just bounced from job to job. So I did some bar work, stuff like that, worked in the supermarket. And then I worked as an estate agent, and I was out dropping leaflets through people's doors. And someone mugged me and stabbed me for my phone because I put up a fight because I was 19 at the time, and I thought that, you know, the guy wasn't that big. I thought I can take him stupidly. And he stabbed me 3 times, and I was okay though. I was just like, they stitched me back together and I was okay. But then afterwards I had a really difficult time. So I couldn't work out what was wrong with me. I was kind of too young, or didn't really look into things like depression or post-traumatic stress and things like that. So I remember talking to kind of friends, and they just slap me on the back and say, you know, get on with it, you're fine, kind of, you did the right thing, you fought him off, you know. It's kind of a teenage thing to do, you know. And but then I really struggled afterwards, and just like I had trouble sleeping, and quit my job and didn't do an awful lot for a while. And then I wrote down what happened, and that was the first time I'd written anything since school. And I kind of changed the people involved to fictional characters, which would sound strange, but it really worked. And then I slept for the first time that night after I'd done it. And then so I started writing a bit more, but nothing like, it wasn't a book, it wasn't even a diary. It was just the way I was feeling, but kind of changed, you know, the people involved would change. So I had this person that was going through this difficult time. And that was probably the first time I wrote anything broadly fictional. And then I read an interview with a stockbroker in the paper. And he had a Ferrari and he was really rich. And I thought, I'm going to be a stockbroker. You know, how hard can it be? You know, again, being young and stupid. So I went, printed my CV off and went into the city and managed to kind of blank my way into this entry-level job. And then I worked there and worked my way up, and I was really happy. You know, it was tough. It was long hours, things like that. And I was a broker for a while. And I really wanted to work on a trading desk, which is like the big, you know, that was my big dream, to get onto this desk. It's because you're a proprietary trader, so you take the money the company makes and you reinvest it in the stock market. And I was allowed to lose £10,000. That was kind of my limit. And so if you lose £10,000, you sit down with your boss. And then I lost £1 million not long after that. And yeah. And and I hid it for a while because I thought I could make it back, which was mad. You know, I thought I'm going to make it all back. This is easy, and I lost a bit more, and then I got caught, and then I got kind of pulled into an office with some lawyers and some other people, and but I'd started to make money again, and they kind of really generously said, look, we won't take this any further if you pay back half of it out of your own pocket. And I was 23, 24, and I just signed it there and then. So I went home with £500,000 worth of debt that night, and that's just in my name. And I was getting married at the time, and I didn't tell my wife, my fiance, and she thought I was doing really well. So the wedding costs were like spiraling out of control, and I was in a really bad way again. So, and I stopped sleeping. I went through the exact same thing that happened to me when I was 19, and so I started writing again. And I just got into it. You know, I got into writing every night. When I got in, my wife would be asleep, and I'd sit up till late writing. And I stayed in the city for 10 years till I was just about to turn 30. I paid off the debt, and I got called in, and I was offered a promotion, and then I quit my job there and then. And my wife was pregnant at the time, and I didn't tell her. And I came home, and I knew I wanted to write a book, and I wanted to be an author, but I had no idea how to do it. But all of a sudden, I was unemployed, and I was an author. And so then I wrote my debut, which was Tall Oaks, and the rest is history. You make these decisions, and they kind of shape the rest of your life without you knowing what's going on. And then writing became like a therapy kind of, and then it turned into a job, which I love. Yeah.
That's amazing. So where did you get your first book published?
So I quit my job and then said, let's move to Spain for a while. We'd never been to Spain, didn't speak Spanish, my wife was pregnant. So we moved to Alicante at the top, and then drove all the way down to Marbella. It was like this big road trip through the mountains. And I wrote Tall Oaks, my debut, but I wrote it in a month, strangely, because my wife was gonna give birth, and I thought once the baby comes, this is it's going to be a lot harder to find free time. So I had this idea for Tall Oaks, the first book, and it was about a missing child in this small town in California. And I thought, if I don't get it down now, it's not going to happen. So I wrote 5,000 words a day for a month and had a first draft. And I finished it the day before she went into labour. And then it was awful. It wasn't like a finished, polished book. It was an awful, awful first draft. And it probably took a year after that of editing it. But again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know you needed an agent. I didn't know how you get a publisher. I just knew nothing. It was so naive and stupid looking back, and it was such a risky thing to do. But Tall Oaks was plucked from the slush pile by someone that really liked it at an agency. And then I got a few more agent offers. I went into London and met with loads of agents, and then chose the agent that I'm still with now, Kath Summerhay. She was at William Morris at the time, and she's now at Curtis Brown, and they're brilliant. Yeah, so that was that. I had a 2-book deal for the first 2, then signed another 2-book deal. So I have another one to write, which I haven't started yet. We Begin at the End was 3 years, kind of 3.5, 3 years, something like that. But yeah, I don't think I can do it quicker. It's difficult. I still work, I still trade in the stock market, but I do it with my own money because it pays the bills. And I work part-time in the library as well, which I love. It's like my favourite job that I've ever had.
Have you since had any kind of formal writing training?
No, nothing. No, that's another thing. Like when you send your book out, you send out the 3 chapters to agencies, you have to send a covering letter. And I had no idea, and I had nothing to put on it, because there's no MA, there's no creative writing courses. So it was like a couple of lines. I just said that I was a trader now, I want to be a writer, this is my book. So I got really lucky. But but I know so many writers that have done the courses, and they speak really highly of them. And I do think that, I think they must be a good idea. I mean, I don't know if it takes the pain out of writing a book or makes it easy, but I do think you probably learn some valuable techniques, when it comes to planning, plotting, things like that. Yeah, so I don't know what I'm missing. I should go back and do one. I think about it all the time. I think about doing one of the courses.
Do you read a lot?
I do, but I read crime 99% of the time, unless I'm researching for a book, in which case I'll take a break. But it's the sheer volume of books. You know, you get sent a lot of books to read and review and quote for and things like that. And a lot of them are my friends now, the authors, and I love reading their books. But not as much time as I would like to read. Like Holiday, I would just read solidly. You know, if it wasn't for the kids, they kind of ruin holidays. Because you have to watch them all the time, otherwise they'll drown and things like that. Get sunburn, and I'll get blamed for it. So yeah, no, I don't get as much time as I would like, and I do, because we're having building work done and I'm working from home at the moment. I tend to write when the house is quiet, which is only late at night, which is when I would be reading normally. If I'm stuck or anything, you know, if I've got writer's block, if it's just not happening, I'll read something that I like. You know, I'll go back to one of my favourites, and it's so inspiring that you know, it helps me through it. But yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. I can't imagine a writer that isn't a big reader. You know, growing up all through my childhood, all through my teens, I was a massive reader.
You mentioned writer's block. I feel like this is etiquette is not to really talk about writer's block. Can I ask you, do you suffer from it? What do you think about it as a...
In kind of a different way. So I won't sit down and just not be able to write. What I'll do is I'll bang out 1,000 words or 2,000 words that I know are not very good, that I'll have to change later, just so that I feel like I've done something, or I feel like I've moved the story along. And I can go on for a long time like that. I can write nearly like a whole book just going through the motions, knowing that it's not the best that I can do, and I'm going to have a massive headache later when I come to change it. But you just kind of get stuck in it, and it happens every book. You know, it really, like We Begin at the End was an absolute nightmare. There were so many times throughout it where I just wanted to stop, or just, so I emailed my editor many times saying, I can't do it, I don't want to do it anymore, I can't write this book, it's not the way I want it to be, it's not good, it's not. And I just refuse to send anything that isn't the absolute best that I can write. Like, wouldn't sleep at night.
So where and when did the idea for We Begin at the End first appear?
Years ago, I think it was nearly 4 years ago, I was having dinner at Harrogate, which is a big crime festival. I was having dinner with my editor, and we were talking about book 3, what was going to be my book 3. And I kind of pitched this idea, this kind of loose idea. I said, I've got this image of this girl with a gun wearing a Stetson, this young teenage girl, and she's kind of on the lookout for revenge. And I pitched this really simple revenge story. And then it evolved into what it is now, this massive, but I was going to deliver it in a year. I was going to be my quick book. I was going to turn it around quickly. I was going to get into some sort of rhythm. I wasn't going to let it drive me mad. And then 3 years later, I delivered it. And yeah, and I went a bit mad during it. Yeah, but it was just that dinner. It was just that idea. It was like, I never pitch anything fully formed because I know it will change massively. Like my first draft and the finished book are different books. They are unrecognisable. So, but my editor had faith and kind of gave me the freedom and trusted me to write it.
So which do you think for you is the hardest part? Is it getting that first draft down, or is it going through the edits and then making it what it's going to end up being?
I think I struggle with the first draft massively. I'll go as far as I can. I'll spend a couple of years totally alone with this book until it's like I can't see anything anymore. I can't see what's not working. And then I'll draft in, like then it's like reinforcement comes. You get backup from your editor. And that's when it starts to feel more like a real book. But I struggle with the crime element. Like, you know, with the book, like with plot twists, stuff like that, they come. I think sometimes people read books, like they'll read a Harlan Coben book and imagine it's a fully formed thing that he sat down and these amazing twists happen. And I don't know anyone that works like that. I don't think it happens like that. I think it comes out through editing. You know, you go through again and again this process until the plot makes sense, until the twists are not just there, you know, to be a plot twist, until they're kind of relevant to the story. And so I struggle with all of it, really. In answer to your question, every single bit of it is difficult. Even letting go of it, you know, when you deliver it, and when I sign off on it for the last time, that's what I really find that hard, because I get no more chances to tweak it, and then all of a sudden it's out in the world and the first reviews come in, and then newspaper reviews, and it's like, it's tough. It is tough, because what was once yours, like these characters were mine and it was my story, all of a sudden everyone has an opinion on, or yeah, but I get that's how it works. I can't just keep the book for myself. They won't pay me for that.
How would you describe Duchess?
I would describe her as my everything, the love of my life. She's my favourite character that I've ever written. So she's an outlaw. She, of the years I spent writing this book, probably half belonged to Duchess. I knew the story would kind of live or die with her, you know, if I didn't get her right. And that's part of the reason why I almost gave up on it, just because I just couldn't get her right. You know, it just didn't feel right. She didn't feel real enough. And then it took years of rewriting every bit of dialogue, every bit of narrative that surrounds her was written and rewritten again and again. It became like an obsession. And but she's complex. She's 13, but she's got this strong moral compass, but she'll break it to pieces if someone threatens her family. And she's 13, but she's so hard on herself. You know, she's completely unforgiving of herself and everyone around her. It's quite a hard way to live a life, I think. And she makes decisions kind of based on her gut, because she's 13, you know, it's a difficult way to make decisions. She's got no real life history to speak of, you know, to help guide her. She's got no role models. But you also get these glimmers of this girl that she could have been. Or, you know, if you take away all the angst, if you take her difficult home life away and her circumstances, you know, there's a scene where she's going to the school dance with a boy that asks her. And I love bits like that. And the bits where she makes a joke or something, because it reminds you, you know, that she's still just a teenager and she wants to have fun, but she doesn't really know how to, or doesn't allow herself to, because she's got these huge responsibilities, like taking care of her brother. Even when she's got a grandfather to help her, she kind of won't cede control because she doesn't trust him. You read about it all the time. I did a lot of research and read a lot of case studies and things, and kids are so resilient and tough, and, you know, the things that they can go through and come out the other side is, you know, it's inspiring. I mentioned before I had this image of her, and she had this Stetson and this gun, and it was like a bit Wild West. And but I had, on the other hand, she was just this young girl with no real roots. She has no idea who her father is, and she has no real role models to speak of, or no one that she will admit that she looks up to. So at school, she's tasked with completing a family tree. And it's just empty on her dad's side, but on her mum's side, she manages to trace the route back to an outlaw, a known outlaw, and she kind of grabs onto that and, you know, holds it really tight. And as well as giving herself some history, it's also kind of a strong and fearless role model, you know, that doesn't necessarily conform, but does what they believe is right. And it gives her the identity she uses to justify her own behaviour. And it's often bad behaviour, or we would see as bad behaviour, but it's like a crutch to her, you know. So when she's feeling weak, she'll remind herself who she is and whose blood she's got in her veins. And it's a powerful thing for her to be able to hang on to that. And I did loads of research. I did loads of reading into, you know, the bands of outlaws and things. It was really interesting. And there was kind of this blood oath loyalty between this gang, you know, and they die for each other. And I think Dutchess kind of demands that of the people around her, or expects it's just a given, you know, that they will side with her and they will back her up even if she's doing something wrong. I'm currently having massive building work done right above my head. There's a temporary ceiling above me, and above that there's some men with drills making a noise. Yeah. So apologies if you can hear any background noise.
You talk in the novel about the idea of free will a little bit, and how one person's action could cause an effect on someone else's life. And I felt reading it that so many of the characters are great, and they almost deserve a better life. Do you think many of the people in the novel deserve a better life, or more than what they have?
It's such a good question. It's I gave it a lot of thought as well when I was writing it, and I debated it. I think when you look at karma, when you look at cosmic forces and fairness, there's an element of implying that we're not really in control. someone else, there's a grand plan for all of us, and the universe finds a way to balance the good and the bad. And for someone like Duchess and her mum, I think it's understandable to cling to these ideas, because otherwise what have you got? You know, you've got bad people doing bad things to you and around you, and they seem to have everything. They seem to have so much more. So they kind of cling to this idea that things will come good in the end. And it's like this unshakable faith that Duchess loses throughout the book and needs to find again. But we know that it doesn't work like that. No matter how much we as readers, or me as a writer, want to give, you know, a certain ending or for certain things to happen, I need it to be real, or feel real to me and feel right. And it's tough. It is tough to write that. And it starts to feel a bit like you don't want to write something gloomy, you know, I don't want to bring everyone down. It's her story, and that's why you get the humour throughout it, because we're spending a year in her life. And not only is it nice as a reader to remind yourself that she's 13 and she can have fun, but as a writer, it's like coming up for air sometimes, you know, when you write a lighter scene, and it reminds you, yeah, it's important. I thought it was going to be Walk and Martha. Throughout the book, that was going to be the love story. You know, that was going to be Walk, this guy that kind of never grew up. That's why he hangs on to, he was called Walk at school, and even though he's now the police chief, he's still kept that name. We don't find out his real name in the whole book, because he is just Walk. You know, he's kept the identity that he had when he was 15. And he had this perfect summer when he was a kid, and he tries to hold on to it, and he tries to stop the town around him from changing. And then when he reconnects with Martha, he gets another shot at, you know, the one that got away, the love of his life, and he hasn't dated anyone since. There's been no one else. So I thought it was going to be that. And then Thomas Noble came along and changed it all, because I thought, this is Dutchess, she deserves someone like this. And and then it evolved with Duchess and Hal. I mean, that was really some of the earlier edits. There is no thawing of their relationship. There's just like this hatred, and she can't get past it. And yeah, so that changed, that did evolve.
How important to the story are the secondary characters? What do they bring to the novel? I'm thinking people like Thomas Noble or Dolly or Paddy.
I think they're everything. I think they're, we see a glimpse of life. You know, the book is a glimpse of a year in the life of these people. And if you think of your own life or my life, you know, they're made up of so much more than our inner circle. You know, there's so many people around us. And these characters change the story, and they change the way that we look at Duchess and the way that we look at Walk based on their interactions with these people. So they're completely, you know, they're invaluable. And Thomas and Martha do so much for Duchess and Walk. You know, they help them grow. You know, as characters, we are able to watch them change because of their interactions with these people. And like Cuddy, like I'd always had this image of an American prison warden, you know, this kind of tough, hardened man, and he's this like real sweetheart, and it kind of turns it on its head. And I love that he's looking out for, you know, that he really does care, you know, and it gives you some faith when the book is quite dark or the Duchess is going through a difficult time. It gives you faith that there's good people, you know, because there is in the world. You know, the world's made up of good people. That's a difficult one. I genuinely don't know what I'd call it. I think it falls somewhere between crime, coming of age, adventure, general fiction. I kind of love that about it as well. And I did set out to write a book, you know, that I didn't think about where it would fit. I just wanted to tell this story. And I think you can get bogged down in genre and where it's going to go and how a publisher's going to publish it. But that's not really my job. My job is to tell the best story that I can tell. And their job is to worry about all of that, thank God. Because it's a difficult job, I think. But it's hard to define because it's a snapshot of life and it doesn't fit neatly into one box like life does. And I love the adventure side of it. Duchess sets out on this huge quest and it's fueled by courage and loyalty and determination. And on the flip side, she's still a girl that's recently been to a first dance with a boy, which fits probably into an entirely different category of story. And then you have a love story between Walk and Martha and Thomas and Dutchess. And you have a crime story, which is Walk investigating the crime at the centre of the book, you know, and you have these characters that he comes across when he's doing police work, but it's his job, you know, we're just getting a glimpse of their lives and everything that encompasses them. So in answer to your question, I don't know what it is. I have no idea. It's just a story, a really good story that everyone should read.
So are there any particular authors or books which have made a lasting impact on you?
So there's a book called The Last Child by John Hart, and that was when I was in the city and I was coming up to my 30th, and I read it and it was just brilliant and it blew me away. And then I tracked down this interview with John Hart, and he was a lawyer, a successful lawyer, and he quit his job, just jacked it in to write his debut. You know, he kind of followed his dreams, and that was the next day I did the same, and it was so inspiring. And then I sent him this email, this kind of long-winded email recently, and he read We Begin at the End and quoted for it, and we have a John Hart quote, and it was just like the best moment ever that I've ever had. And then I kind of bombarded him with emails after that. I forced him to be my friend. But Cormac McCarthy, I love The Road. I really love that book. Angie Thomas, I read The Hate You Give. Absolutely brilliant, totally blown away. I read a lot of young adult fiction. I grew up reading Stephen King. Yeah, he's just a master of characterization. I think people forget sometimes, you know, just how good he is. Because you get dazzled by like it and like the creepy clown and things like that, but the characters are just perfect. They're just so well written. A book called Dutchess by Beverly, which came out a few years ago. It was brilliant, won every prize, but I don't think it got the recognition, like the widespread recognition it deserved. There was a book called The Year of the Runaways by Sunjeev Sahota, which is about migrant workers in London and in England, and that's brilliant. That was shortlisted for the Booker Prize years ago, and I still think about that all the time. I think there's a lot of pressure on the opening, the opening line, the opening paragraph. It's supposed to pull you, it's supposed to be a strong hook. I think you can get too bogged down in that, so I generally skip it, and I will start writing the book randomly in the middle. I'll just start writing a scene that doesn't fit anywhere else just because I need to get a feel for it. I'd start small as well. If you haven't written before, or haven't written for a long time, I'd just go for 100 words, just try and write down a chapter in a month, get a good chapter down and you're on your way. Tell your story that you want to tell and don't worry about genre, don't be confined by it. Everyone says don't write to trends, and that's massively true, just because everyone else is, all of a sudden there's an influx of these books doesn't mean they want another one necessarily, or doesn't mean that you should feel obliged to write this story because it will sell. That should be the last thing on your mind. But most of all, I think, and the thing that I forget is to enjoy it. No one's kind of making you do it, you're choosing to do it because you want to do it. And I lose sight of that a lot. I forget why I'm doing it when it's really difficult and I'm really stressed and I just want to go take my kids to the park or something, but I miss things like their school concerts, stuff like that, just because I've got a deadline and it's not going well. But I do it because I love it, and I think that's the best reason to do it.